Hi there, this is Sophie, and with my Puce à l'oreille podcast, I share my visions, my ideas, and I meet inspiring people to explore how to activate communities for the planet. Today, I would like to mention the public hearing that is going on at the federal level in the US to hear about people's comments on the idea of authorizing the blocking of the sun rays in order to prevent climate change, which I'm personally against, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I thought that climate modification programs didn't exist until recently, but now I'm sure that this has been existing since the 1950s and it's been regulated in the US since the 70s, and it's been going on around the world for decades. And I am very shocked to learn that. I've learned that about a year and a half ago when my personal experience brought me to research into that topic. I was on the western slope of Colorado for a trip, and I was camping for a week. And during that week, I didn't hear hardly any planes flying above our heads, because it's a region where there's a lot of high mountains. So I don't know, I didn't hear that many planes, but one morning I woke up hearing a lot of planes flying very low. And so I got out of the tent, and then I saw that there were some plane trails in the sky that were very aligned and very parallel and perpendicular to each other.
They're like 1, 2, 3, 4. They all aligned. And here 1, 2, I bet they're going to come back and they're going to do some more lines. I can hear one coming right now.
I was surprised because that was not happening the previous days during this trip. But then a few hours later, maybe not even a few hours later, maybe an hour or two later, I started sneezing, and my husband started sneezing, my friend who was there started sneezing, like we all started sneezing and having itchy eyes. And I was thinking that this may have been connected to what the plane put in the sky. And let's say 2 hours later, a big storm came by, and we were going to go for a hike, and we had to leave. We had to just shorten our trip because it wasn't worth it. Like, there were big storm, big rain coming up. So this led me to research more into weather modification programs, or chemtrails, or geoengineering, or cloud seeding, whatever you want to call it, because depending on who talks about it, the word may be different, but to me it's kind of the same. And so the first thing I found that shocked me was the information that's disclosed on by the state of Colorado, one of the agency of Colorado that's in charge of managing the water supply, which is called the Colorado Water Conservation Board. They have a page on their website that's specifically talking about weather modification programs, and that explains that this has been going on since the 1950s, and it's been regulated since the 1970s, 1972 actually. So just a little bit more information about the state of Colorado. The companies that are licensed to change the weather in Colorado could be either public organization, public companies that manage the water supply in Colorado, or it's also sometimes you could see ski resorts who maybe you can assume, like, they don't say what the intention is, but you can assume that it's to have more snow in the winter for the ski resorts. And there's also the orchard companies, which are located in the area where I actually had my experience with the weather modification program. So, and I found also that they only have to pay $100 to get this license, and it's a license for 5 years. And also, one more thing, there is no environmental studies. Like, on this page, on this website, you can find 3 studies that are dated from 2005 and 2006, and they're not about environmental impact of the weather modification. They're about on whether or not it's effective to bring more water or to bring more snow into the area that they're changing the weather from. So there's actually absolutely no environmental impact information there. So that's really lacking, I think. But anyway, This is for the state of Colorado, which is in the middle of the US, but then there's all these other states that are running programs too. And then there is a regulation that's on the national level, federal level. It exists since 1972. It requires that all persons who engage or attempt to engage in any weather modification activity in the United States report such activities to the U.S. Secretary of Commerce in such form and containing such information as the Secretary may by rule prescribe. So basically these reports are published on the NOAA library website, so the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's website. You can find a lot of reports. I stumbled upon a report dated from 2023 from a man named Luke Eisman, who published a report before starting a 200 years program of cooling the earth, weather modification program, where the chemicals used weren't disclosed. They weren't all disclosed. There were no environmental studies, and that was a report that was published on there. One thing that's happening right now is the opportunity to express our views on that topic and to say stop and to say no more of that, because there's a group of scientists that requested a regulation change at the federal level, and so now we have the opportunity to express our comments. On March 12, 2024, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration received a petition from the Environment, Energy and Natural Resources Center at the University of Houston Law Center, the Institute for Responsible Carbon Management, and a collection of environmental law professors and environmental policy experts, collectively named petitioners, to amend the NOAA's reporting regulations under the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972. Right now they're talking about blocking the sun to reduce the temperatures and to reverse the effect of climate change. But how do you know that's going to actually be beneficial to the world? Like, we all need the sun. The sun is like vitamin D. It's energy. We need the sun. Even the plants, the trees, like they need the sunlight. So now there's a big opportunity for people to comment on this. I think it's a very important topic because we're talking more and more about climate change and potential solutions, and people are into a big fear of, like the climate becoming crazy and, living on a planet that's not livable because of the temperature or the weather and the lack of water, the disturbance of the hydrologic cycle. We're talking about climate change, but how are these operations impacting the global climate change, especially since they have been happening since the 1950s, right when everything started to get messed up in the climate. So, and we hear only geoengineering being a potential solution to climate change. But to me, it's like, first let's look at how much it has caused climate change. Because, in the climate, everything is related. So whatever we do here on the local climate, how does that not impact the climate on the other side of the world? It's really hard to understand the behavior of clouds. It's easy to understand them in a lab situation, but when it's a real life experiment, it's really hard to understand what's happening because there's so much. It's so complex. There's so much interactions. They call that a noise in the climate. It's hard for them to anticipate what the climate can be because of the complexity of the Earth system. So how are we so sure that all the climate modification programs that are happening are not impacting climate at the global level? Especially, I found also that among the publicly available data on weather modification programs, I found a map. I'm going to share the link with you. There's a map that lists a couple of these programs. And there has been over 300 programs around the world since the 1950s, I guess. I don't know, before 2000 at least. And each of these programs may have had, several stages where the planes fly several times during the year to change the weather. So there's we don't know how many operations were happening. We just know that there were 300 programs, and how many operations within these programs, we're not clear about that, So how do you do this? How do you put your comment into this? And I hope that a lot of people would do it because it's very unique opportunity to do it. So you go to the website regulation.gov and enter NOAA-OAR-2024-0091. And then you will find 2 items in the result of this search, and you click on the comment icon, and then you complete all the required fields, and you enter or attach your comments in there. So just something to know also is that if you put your name or address or anything, any personal information or sensitive information, it's going to be published on their website afterwards. And so if you don't want to be visible, or if you don't want to have all your information disclosed, you can put NA, non-applicable, when it's asking about your information, your personal information. So that's mostly for people in the US, but honestly, modifying the weather like that and blocking the sun is going to affect the whole world. So whether you're in the US or not, I think it's worth it to comment on this and to bring, all the knowledge that we may have, or even just the feeling like, no, I don't feel like doing that. I'm going to read what type of information they're requesting from the comments so that you know what to talk about in the comments. So NOAA solicits public comment on the petition for rulemaking to amend NOAA's reporting regulations under the Weather Modification Reporting Act. NOAA is particularly interested in 1. How NOAA should update 15 CFR Part 908 reporting requirements to account for solar radiation modification experiments. So they want to know how to change the current regulations to add the option of doing radiation modification experiment. 2nd, what reporting requirement NOAA should include regarding potential and or measured environmental impacts of weather modification experiments given the state of the science and current detection capabilities. So the idea here is what type of environmental studies we want before they can even do that. So I listed a couple, like I want a study of the existing cloud seeding programs, and I want to know how does that affect the climate. I want to know how does that affect the environment. So there's a lot to say in this section. 3rd, the spatial scale of weather modification experiments and their intended effect for which NOAA should request in submitted reports. Okay, so on what geographical area and scale do we want or not want this to happen? And 4, whether under existing statutory authorities, NOAA should pursue a broader regulatory strategy for solar radiation modification research and experimentation. So it's whether or not we want to have more regulation for solar radiation modification or research. If by chance you have any interesting scientific articles to include in these comments, or any data, any personal experience, then you can include that in there. I would refrain from just mentioning the plane trails that you see in the skies, because for a lot of people this is just contrails, even though there may be some programs that we don't know about. So maybe what you see in the sky, maybe that's something that's that's also with the intention of modifying the climate, the weather, but we only know what we know. So for now, some weather modification programs are available and publicly available. Some are not, potentially, at least the ones that are from the military, and the ones from some research program that are punctual, like they're not all in there. So yeah, if you can do that before the 19th of November 2024, which is coming up in a few days, that would be great, so that more people can express their views against that, because we're starting to be aware of the existence of these programs, and it's like in the hands of a few, and you could trust these people, but we don't know what we're doing with the climate. We're just messing up with it right now. So I think it's better to be careful and to let nature do its things. Like there are systems in the nature that regulate everything, and we're interfering with it when we should not. So I believe, at least, that we should not. So yeah, that's about it, and let me know what you think about this in the comment. If you commented, I would love to know if some of you watching would have commented on this public hearing, and yeah, Talk soon for another video.